this. What does this statement mean, Dave? Like, Jamie Carragher thinks that Arsenal aren't going to get any better under Mikel Arteta. Well, if Arsenal go out and sign 2 30-goal-a-year centre forwards, that's obviously not going to be the case. Because some of it comes down to Mikel Arteta. Some of it still comes down to who they actually bring in through the door this summer. This current crop maybe has gone as far as they can under Mikel Arteta. But squads change, don't they? We all know that. So to write off Mikel Arteta and say that he's done as much as he can, what he has done is created a side that have pushed really close and continually got better year after year and have pushed really close to be in a Premier League title fight and win a Premier League. And then this year is a bit of one of those kind of rogue years in the Premier League that we'll get once every 10 years or so or something like that, where there's a lot of results and things happening. I mean, I was listening today, somebody saying that Manchester City might need 2 new fullbacks, a centre-back, a goalkeeper, 2 new wingers, maybe a bit of backup at centre-forward and a couple of central midfielders as well. And you're talking about City's overhaul suddenly being like a complete full 11-man roster overhaul, which I think, again, seems a bit ludicrous, to be honest. I think there's depth still to be found and there's some young talent they can start to push through a bit more and weed out some of the old guard. But we are just dealing with a season this year that is a bit like that Leicester City season, as we keep hearing with the Nottingham Forest-Leicester City comparison. It's just a bit odd, it's a bit weird, it's a bit rogue. Liverpool are being consistently good enough to hold off all others. But Mikel Arteta's ability to do more with this Arsenal side isn't necessarily hindered by his ability. He's been unlucky with injuries throughout this year, and maybe they need to go out and find another exceptional centre forward, like Manchester City have done with an Erling Haaland, like Liverpool have with a Mo Salah at the moment, who's played out of his skin this season. You know, that guarantees 25 goals minimum a year. That's all Arsenal at. So Arteta's not really the thing holding Arsenal back, I would say. It's that goal-scoring centre forward and that little bit of luck with injuries. So for Carragher to say, they can't do any better, you haven't got a Scooby-Doo about what happens to this side in the near future, Jamie.
What did you think, Ollie, of Arteta walking away from the interview while it was still ongoing on Sky Sports after the game on Sunday? I don't know if you've seen this, Ollie. Presumably, have you? Yeah, he's giving me a little nod for our YouTube viewers. If anyone that hasn't seen it, Mikel Arteta was essentially asked towards the end of the interview, why didn't you buy a striker in January? And the question annoyed Arteta. And I've got to say, I get it. He's been asked that question a million times. And do you think that the board said, Mikel, we got this incredible number 9 we found. We can get him in January. We can get him. Do you want him? Do you think Arteta said, no, thank you? That's obviously not what's happened. So he was annoyed by that question. And then the follow-up question, as he's trying to scuttle away from the interview, he's asked, what about the title race? You're 15 points behind. Do you think you can get? And he just walks off. What did you think about that? Do you think that's a fair game from Mikel Arteta? Because these coaches do so many interviews and he's been answering the same questions again and again? Or do you think you are there and as part of your contract to fulfill media obligations and someone has asked you a couple of very legitimate questions that your fan base would be extremely interested in knowing the answer to and you have not answered them?
It's about as leading a question as asking Mikel Arteta if Arsenal should have bought a centre forward, David Windsor. Were you doing the interview for Sky? Is that what you're trying to hint at? I know you've just rushed back from Spain, but was it so early that you could get back and do that yesterday? Just needle Arteta after 90 minutes. Look, yeah, it's 100%. It's his obligation. The amount of money that gets spent in TV broadcasting rights, you have to face the music. That's the whole point of having journalists at these football games. It is to provide a level of accountability rather than hiding behind your club TV, Arsenal TV and Manchester United TV, where we're only going to throw up softball questions like, really hard luck today. The boys worked so hard despite the 5-0 defeat. You know what I mean? There's nothing comes from those interviews. Actually having an interviewer, and I can't remember who was doing it now for Sky Sports, but I absolutely rate the fact that he stuck at it, because we've seen so many times, there's that Roy Hodgson one where he gets angry at Ivan Gaskell, I think it is, Match of the Day, and gets really aggy with him. And they end up repeating the question, and Hodgson then gives a very angry answer and stuff. And so much of that is just rude, because it's the point of journalists being there.
Patrick Davison.
The point of journalists being there is to ask those questions and try and get an answer from them. So it shouldn't be wishy-washy softball. Arteta should have an answer. Christ, he should have a stock answer at this point. The number of times the question's been asked in newspaper headlines, maybe not directly to his face. So he should have a stock answer. And he should have if Arteta hasn't been given the opportunity to buy a centre forward, would it be much nicer for him and everybody if he just came out and said, look, the club weren't willing to give me the money to bring in the people that we felt that we needed to bring in? And if that isn't the case, and Arteta felt they didn't need to bring a centre forward in, Arteta should say, look, I didn't think we needed it at that time, and now we're paying the price for it. Because being open and honest about it, rather than just being angry and walking away, is such a better... To put your hands up. I'll always come back to...
Just tell the truth.
Come back to the punditry of when Leon battered City, and somebody in the studio, and I'm pretty sure it was Ian Wright, just went, I don't know how Leon have done this because I don't watch French football enough and I don't know much about this team. What I have seen tonight is this, this and this. And everybody went, God, it's not great that you haven't done any research really on the opposition, but what you have done is you've openly admitted it and you've not just thrown out a load of like hyperbolic, well, they've got lucky or well, they do this or well, they do that and trying to make it up as you go along kind of thing. And this is what people should realise, that just being open and honest and saying, well, I didn't know, actually, I wasn't expecting us to lose all of our strikers this season and have a real problem of finding goals. I thought we would have enough quality. That's a faux pas on my part. I will do something to rectify it in the future. Accept responsibility, acknowledge a mistake, and say that you're going to learn from it. And everyone would just walk away happy. And you'd never have one of these interviews again. But to walk off is just disrespectful.
I don't think you can underestimate how powerful that would be if he just gave the honest answer to that question, whatever it is. You know, exactly as you say, Ollie. Or, you know, if he said that the club identified loads of targets, but none fit the exact profile I was looking for. We're going to continue our search in the summer. We completely appreciate the fans want more, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, he could have just done with being honest. Regarding the have we passed peak Arsenal under Mikel Arteta, I think that it's a young squad. It's a young coach. And as you say, if you look at the trajectory under Arteta, 8th, 5th, 2nd, and the last two seasons, 84 points and 89 points. Incredible points tallies. Any other year, you're probably winning a title, really, in terms of Premier League era. So everything suggests that it is just an anomaly of a season. But I did think this, Ollie, just before we came on pod. A Liverpool head coach would not survive 5 years without a trophy. A Manchester City coach would not survive 5 years without a trophy. A Chelsea coach would not survive 5 years without a trophy. A Man United coach would not survive 5 years without a trophy. A Barcelona coach, a Real Madrid coach, a Bayern Munich coach, an Inter Milan coach. The top clubs, they don't wait 5 years for a coach to get everything right, for all the pieces of the puzzle to come together at the exact time. They don't wait for these kind of excuses. And it's nearly 5 years since Arteta won the FA Cup. In his first kind of season when he joined. So he's nearly 5 years without a trophy. You don't get away with that at any of the top, I'm going to say 18 to 20 clubs in Europe. You really don't. You're gone. You know, you wouldn't get away with that even at an Atletico, slightly down the pecking order, Atletico Madrid or a Milan or you're not going to get away with that. Okay, so I think in that sense, he's slightly fortunate.
Tell me, in the last 2 months, outside English football grounds, the teams that have had protesters saying that their club is being poorly run, poorly managed. Tottenham, Chelsea,
Man United,
Manchester United,
Chelsea.
Arsenal, at least, they have their frustrations, right? But I would argue that the way Arsenal are doing it with, trophyless season is, season on season is unacceptable. But when you're seeing a trajectory and a growth, as you've already just touched on, as we've said time and time again on this podcast, I actually think sticking with somebody who keeps building you up and up and up. And the hardest thing to have in business, in anything, is continual growth over a long period of time. You're going to have a down year at some point, whether you're talking macro or micro in terms of economics or anything. There's going to be the odd down year. But if Arteta next year continues to grow and they challenge once again for a Premier League title, and maybe they do find an FA Cup or a League Cup on the way that will then stem those kind of criticisms. But I would argue that the way Arsenal are doing it, you're pointing at a lack of trophies, but I'm saying that as a football club, the way it's being run is actually better than so many of those that we're seeing, supporters outside being angry at. The continual rotation of managers, the amount of money that's then being used to pay off managers' contracts, to get rid of them, to bring new managers in on bigger salaries, because the more managers you bring in, the more money it's going to end up costing you. And that just then gets put on fans and supporters, or then the mismanagement of club funds, and then puts them in financial difficulty down the line. Or you find a nice, oligarch or somebody to send it to. I'm sure Elon Musk will be buying a Premier League football club soon enough. Like all these kind of rappers in the US are thinking about buying like National League sides and stuff to try and emulate Wrexham. But it's just that it's so crazy to think how much we kind of battered like the Cronkies in the past and stuff. That Arsenal might actually be a club that is being managed pretty well off the pitch by not jumping the gun and actually trusting and believing in a manager that might still have a chance to bring them success, and is only really a few points or a few players away from that.